It is now time to check in with Paul Finebaum, presented by Allstate. Paul, good morning. What the hell did we just see yesterday?
Well, we saw a new head coach at Alabama named Kalen DeBoer, who, after all the praise he got here last week, showed that the Nick Saban era is over. Because Nick Saban would have never lost that game, never did lose that game. And Matt, people talk about the La Monroe game in '07. That was he
Yeah.
inherited a 6-7 team that was 500. This is the worst loss I have ever seen by a quality Alabama team. I've seen bad Alabama teams lose to
Sure.
MAU and to Monroe, but I've never seen a great Alabama team lose like this. And it is sending shockwaves through the Alabama ecosystem right now because for all the good that we felt a week ago, the questions that were lingering deep in the crevices of Alabama fans' minds are starting to pop up. And people are reminding us that even at Washington, you saw these very bizarre calls, and you know what I'm talking about. I think there was a game against Arizona State, was it last year? There were other games that Washington barely escaped. So yeah, there's a shock to the system, and what makes it even worse is Alabama has to play again this week against a fading South Carolina team, but it's the week after against Tennessee. And suddenly the numbers game is alive. But what you said a minute ago is true. I mean, I was in College Station yesterday, and I was being told that's the most important game of the day, and I don't even remember what I saw out there because so much has happened since then.
Yeah. So, there's so many layers to this. And by the way, for those that hit me up on social media saying we can't wait for Finebaum and you to break it down, well, here it is because this is the Sunday we've been waiting for. Uh, Part one. Well, first of all, I'm going to start with the most recent thing you said. Texas A&M Missouri was an embarrassment for Missouri. Their non-conference schedule came up and bit them yesterday, and Mike Elko completely outclassed them. We'll break down that game in a minute, but yes, that was supposed to be billed as the biggest game. It was the biggest laugher of the biggest games. So we'll touch on that in a minute. I came on this show. I came on your show. I went on Sports Center. I said it on Sports Center with you. I said that Kalen DeBoer was able to put closure to the Nick Saban era based on what he did against Georgia. And we thought that that was going to be legit because of how they won that game. Then yesterday happens, and I swear, Paul, it was almost as if you were sitting on set with us last night. I look at Dan Mullen and Joey Galloway. I said, here is Kalen DeBoer's biggest thing Sunday morning. Nick Saban would have had his team's attention after beating Georgia the way they did and baiting them to think Vanderbilt could beat them. He'd have been like, you're going to get beat by Vanderbilt. Now, DeBoer's got to explain how you go from the highest of highs, beating the class of the SEC in Georgia, to going to Nashville and losing to the team that's been the doormat for their existence in the conference. And that's the biggest. Paul, this isn't like they lost to Georgia and they went to Columbia and lost to South Carolina. Still stunning, maybe explainable. This one's tough because we've now seen the swing of the pendulum, the highest of highs and now the lowest of lows for Alabama football.
Yeah, and I mean there have been bigger upsets in college football history. I would
Yes.
point to Jim Harbaugh and Stanford beating a number 2 USC, but even Stanford at the time wasn't a great power, but it had moments. But when you talk about college football and you mention Vanderbilt, you immediately get a laugh. I mean, it is like, remember, you're too young to even know, but back, in the 70s and 80s, it was like, oh, you got Slippery Rock for homecoming. Now it's Vanderbilt. And even though we both know what's going on there, they always find a way to blow it. And so this time it didn't happen, and it just seems surreal. And it reminded me a little bit. I covered that Vanderbilt game 40 years ago when Ray Perkins was the coach, and it felt very similar. That was 2 years after Bryant, and suddenly nothing felt right at Alabama again. And I'm not saying that this morning because I know what I said last week, and everyone knows it because it's been shown a million times. But there were old line Alabama fans that just didn't quite buy it, but it was because of the collapse at the end of in the second half,
Yeah.
and that
Yep.
came back yesterday. And in Kalen DeBoer, I'm going to take you through his week. He's calm, he's cool. He came on our show Wednesday, and we went back and talked about the Georgia game. Can you imagine trying to get Nick Saban 4 days after a major win to say, "Okay, Coach, I know you got Vanderbilt. Let's go back and talk." He would have bitten. First of all, he wouldn't have done the interview.
Right.
Uh, and then I'm watching SportsCenter Thursday night. There's Jalen Milroe. I mean, that did not happen under Nick Saban for a reason, Matt.
Right.
And I think what we're going to hear is this program's a little bit too loose. Whether it's NIL, I don't really know what it is. I liked it until I didn't like it Saturday afternoon.
Well, Alabama fans aren't going to like it. And again, for Kalen DeBoer, pardon me, Kalen DeBoer and the emotions, think about this. You go from, again, hey, we got the guy replacing Nick Saban. We're good. We're good. We're good. Now he's about to really understand what that Alabama job is all about. He's waking up this morning going, oh, hell, I just lost to Vanderbilt. And my team over the last 6 quarters has given up 67 points. There have been seasons where Nick Saban's defense, I believe it was 2011,
Yeah.
they gave up 106 points or something like that the entire year. And so where you were the toast of Tuscaloosa last week, I mean, life comes at you fast in the SEC. I never thought it was going to be Vanderbilt, but he's really about to understand that this isn't Seattle anymore. And I think he's going to be fine. But this is an early wake up call with a team that's loaded with talent that they're going to have to get it right quick. And maybe this is that shift in point where DeBoer's like, okay, guys, shut the doors. We're going to the bunker and we're coming out when we're ready to play.
Matt, there are a lot of things about college football I don't understand very well, but there was one thing I do understand, and that's the culture of Alabama football. I spent 32 years in that state, and there is nothing like the week after a shattering loss. And that's not a loss to Georgia is not shattering. It's
Right.
okay. This is shattering. This is a shock to Alabama's manhood. I mean, all those Bama folks who called in shows, including mine, who were boasting and making and rubbing Georgia fans' face in the dirt and saying, "We're your daddy." They just lost to Vanderbilt. And I mean, I just don't know I think everybody appreciates how embarrassing that is. And then, I mean, Nick Saban, who rarely, and I'm not a big fan of the rat poison line. We all overdo it. But he's the one who said 2 weeks ago that, every place in the SEC is tough except Vanderbilt. And I don't know if that was a factor. Maybe it was, but it's still the fact that you just cannot respect it. I was on our Saturday morning show and I was picking this game and I gave all the reasons why Vanderbilt could make it interesting. But then I said what everybody else said. I can't pick Vanderbilt. I mean, you can't.
You cannot.
I mean, because I thought Alabama would be flat. I mean, if you're smart and follow college football, how can you be up after the most emotional game I've ever seen? But Kalen DeBoer is about to experience things. Forget the football field. When his wife goes to the grocery store, when his kids hear things or read things, and it will be vicious. People appreciate what he's done, but this is inexcusable. I mean, there is no way to ever excuse. And people can say, "Well, you're being an elitist here." I don't care. There is no way to ever excuse the #1 Alabama ranked team losing to Vanderbilt. I mean, that is the one thing in the closet you cannot ever do. And he just did it, and he didn't waste any time doing it.
No, well, yeah, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe he just got it out of the way for the rest of his career there. And we've all been preconditioned as college football fans, people who cover the sport, because anyone watching this right now or listening to this, 99.9% of you were watching that game when it went to the half, and you were waiting for the Tide to turn it on, and then just eventually, our producer. Here's a behind the scenes story for ESPN. Our college football final producer, Seth Brody, walks into the studio. I think it was after the halftime, whatever we did. We're just getting done. And he said, "Guys, I think we're going to lead with Alabama and Vanderbilt." And I was like, "Well, this is before the game is over." I go, "Well, why?" He goes, "Well, because Alabama's down at the half." And my exact response was this: "Well, are you going to lead with it when Alabama comes back and wins by 30 in the second half?" And that's just how we're all conditioned and programmed with Alabama. That, for at least now, is gone.
Matt, I mean, I'm traveling back from Texas, and I'm watching Auburn, Georgia on the plane, and whatever else I can get. And yeah, I'm seeing the Vanderbilt score and go, oh, so, and I get off the plane, and I'm like, don't bother me right now. I've been down there, and then I get home, and my wife's watching it, who's a Vanderbilt graduate, I might add.
Oh, congratulations, Mrs.
And
Finebaum.
she and I finally I said they're down by two. I said, quit. I mean, she said, have you been watching the game? I said, no, I couldn't get it on the play. I said, I mean, even down to like 40 seconds, I said, Alabama will win this game because I said that before the Gravedigger against Auburn. That's Alabama, and that's the thing that was shattered yesterday, man. It
Yes.
was the mystique of
Yep.
Alabama. And Saban built that back up to like it was with Bryant for those 25 years.
Yep.
And now it's I mean, Alabama's mystique is literally laying in a gutter right now in Nashville, Tennessee. And that is going to be the hardest thing to get back. And Kalen DeBoer is not this demonstrative guy. He didn't look a whole lot different after the game than he did before the game. Yeah, I can't predict anything other than what we're doing right here. But this is a crowbar to the gut of Alabama football, and I'm fascinated by how they recover.